Our mission statement here at Center Grove is to develop knowledgeable, confident, and responsible citizens through inspirational and innovative learning opportunities. If you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me be clear. If there's interruptions, we will recess. And we'll be doing this all over again. So it's up to you and how you decide to behave. It's that simple. Okay, our first order of business is the adoption of the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we move the public comments section of the agenda to under action items.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Motion passes 5-0. Okay. So our next order of business is the consent items. Do I have a motion on the consent items?
Mr. President, I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander.
I will second, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. And, yeah, is there a reason I'm reverberating?
I think there were too many mics.
Okay. Thank you, Pam. Okay, I have a first and a second on consent items. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, thank you, Mr. Daniels. Motion passes 5-0. We're now moved down to the action items. Our first one is tentative collective bargaining agreement. Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. This evening, turn this on. Thank you, Ms. Russell. This evening, I'm going to provide, well, I'm not, but Mr. Taylor's going to provide you with an update on the work that we've been doing with the Teachers Association for collective bargaining agreement. This evening's information is just that information. The board will take no action tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Before again, I'd like to recognize Mr. David Lawson's in the room with us. He's a co-president of the United Teachers Association of Center Grove, and Miss Peggy Young's watching at home. They were instrumental in reaching this agreement with us, so I thank them. This meeting's been properly advertised 72 hours in advance for the purpose of sharing the tentative agreement. There will be a second meeting on this agreement on Monday for the board to formally approve it. There'll be no action this evening, and I'll just be sharing a summary of the tentative agreement. In whole, the board plans to offer, and we've reached an agreement to increase salaries by a total of 8%. 5.8% of that is basically a cost of living increase, across the board increase on the salary schedule. Another 1.5% of that goes to row advancements. So teachers who were here last year and stayed with Center Grove would advance up in the scale. And then we do column changes for another portion of that percentage. Teachers who earn a new degree would receive additional compensation. And then finally, we have a salary matrix. We added a row to the very top and dropped a row to from the very bottom. And all of those things combined increase our teacher salary from, it was just over $40,000 to $44,169 for a new teacher. And it was about $78,000 for the top of the scale. It's now $85,289. This is a monumental raise for our organization and our corporation. This is due to the increased in funding from the funding formula and the biennium budget passed at the state level this past year. Now, there's a lot of news on that back in April and May. And pleased to announce the board put that right back into teachers' pockets and really did a great job with that. It'll be a 3.5% increase for ECA positions in the contract. We also are adding and removing a few ECA positions. This is something we do annually. Some of these come from the teachers, some from the corporation. And then unfortunately, health insurance is a continuing struggle, and just due to some high claims cost, we are going to have to do quite a significant increase. Nowhere near the increase that folks will see up above, but it's a 12% increase for teachers and a 13% increase for the corporation. And the corporation pays a vast larger majority there, 4 or 5 times the amount. So that 13% is much larger. Not changing the HSA contributions this time, but we would like to close the PPO plan effective January 1st, 2022. It gives everyone one last chance during open enrollment to move into that plan if they choose to. And after that, it would be closed to all transfers. We closed it to new hires back in 2017, so this will actually kind of close it to all movement moving forward. Finally, we had some language we needed to remove from the compliance board, and then just a few various language, date changes, those types of things. On Monday, we do plan to also address a raise for other employee groups, but tonight's information is just on the teachers' bargaining agreement. And, I
Thank you,
think
Mr.
that's
Taylor.
it.
And also, Mr. Daniels and Mr. Alexander were part of the negotiating team. If you'd like to add anything to that?
Sure, thanks, Rich. I want to thank David and his team. As always, great conversation. I think we've come to a great agreement this year, biggest raise since I've been doing negotiations over the last, was this year number 4 or 5? The other piece is kind of as a procedural thing as dictated by IC code. We have to have a hearing tonight. We can't formally, and we have to have 2 hearings, and we can't formally approve the agreement until after the 26th of September, which is why we've scheduled the meeting for Monday morning, the 27th, so we can get that done per IC code.
Thank you. Mr. Daniels, anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, so I'll try to touch on what Scott touched on and go a little further. It's the first time I've been on the committee, and I want to say I was impressed, Mr. Taylor, with your efforts. Appreciate you putting all the materials together for everyone to go through. I was impressed by David Lawson, Peggy Young, and their team. Everybody working together to get to what I think is a fair deal. We've asked the legislature for more money several times. They gave it to us this year, and I think we're doing the right thing with it. I think we're putting it in teachers' pockets. So I'm pleased that we came to a good agreement, and I want to, thank everyone for the process. And since it's my first time on the committee, I can say it's also the largest raise that's been there since I've been on the committee.
Well said, well said.
Hey, Rob, now you got a high bar, brother.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, everyone. I'm sure the teachers are going to appreciate this, all your hard work. Our next order of business, yeah. As Mr. Alexander said, there's no action on this evening. That will be at Monday's meeting. Our next order of business is the first reading of proposed policy revision. Dr. Arkanoff?
Thank you, Mr. Russell. This evening, I'm sharing with you again, this is a no action item. This is the first reading. The board had asked for some clarification on policy 0167.3, which is public participation at board meetings. If you look down, I not read the entire policy to you, you'll see that the clarifications are in green that have been listed there as more clear in the participation of it. The whole purpose of the board's requests for public input was on the action conducted by the board. So with that, unfortunately, people were not clear in understanding would want to speak about any item, and the board wanted to make sure that it is based on action items that the board was going to conduct that day, so on the agenda. So we hope that the language in this revision is clear. Can you move down just a little bit more there? I think those are the only, it was a very, very minor change.
Minor changes.
Hopefully to clarify that language, so. So again, that's the first reading. Is there any questions or any additional changes that you would like to make to the policy? This is a board bylaw policy, so it's your policy and how you would like it to read.
Any questions? Rob? Mr. Daniels? Okay, thank you. Again, we'll have the second reading of this at the October 21st meeting.
Actually, we'll do it, right? September 27th. We'll just do it when we do the other.
Oh, Monday?
Yeah, the
Okay.
Monday meeting, yeah.
We'll move it up.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. Welcome.
Okay, our next action item is to approve school improvement plans. Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Give Nora a minute to walk up here as she's coming up. This evening, I'm recommending that the board approve the school improvement plans as they are presented to you. Mrs. Hoover, or Dr. Hoover, will provide you with some additional information regarding the school improvement plans.
Thank you. Per Indiana code, all public schools must annually submit a school improvement plan. Also, per Indiana State Board of Education, plans must be submitted to and approved by the governing body prior to submission to the state. The applicable legal standards require that each school submit their full revised 3-year plan on a yearly basis, and schools must submit these plans no later than October 8th of this year. The Indiana School Improvement Plan is part of a process for continual school improvement. To be effective, the plan should be viewed as a living document evolving as circumstances and data change during the 3-year period. Basically meaning they're going off current data and current student needs of students they have right now, not just those they had 2 or 3 years ago. Each Center Grove school has reviewed and considered its assessment data and revised their school plans to reflect their current building needs. The student achievement goal for each building is the basis for their strategies and the professional development that they focus on all year long. These are their action plans, so the more expanded document shows not only their goals for student achievement, but also how they're going to reach those goals and the research behind those evidence-based practices. The shorter memo just lists very succinctly each one of their specific goals and not the entire plan. The principals work really hard with their leadership teams and teachers to develop these plans and sort over data all summer, and I appreciate all the work that goes into this. I remember doing this myself, and I'm really proud of the goals they've set for themselves.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hoover.
Any
Anything to add? Questions?
I've had cancer
When do we follow up on how the goals are going?
Well, typically, the goals are set by a couple of different things. One is NWEA, but probably the big one is they're always looking at iLearn, and that is a once-a-year assessment. And so when we get that data, that's what will drive their school improvement plan for next year. So typically, they address in their action plan how they have done the year before. Now, this is a weird year because our data we have that year
Very
without data.
skewed.
But they would address that in their next plan and report out in this form, both to you and then, of course, to the state, and reset a new goal based on the biggest needs, or continue that goal because we still have farther to go.
And just logistically, how do schools come up with their goals? I mean,
All-
teams?
Every school has a leadership team that works with them that is made up of administrators, counselors typically, and teachers are on each team. And so they do this in conjunction with those that know the students the best that are right in the building. And then our department with teaching and learning just helps advise and support and provide a lot of the bigger picture. You'll see many of the goals in the elementaries are similar. We've identified some real needs, and so we're working really hard to create a district plan to meet those larger needs that are running across all the buildings. Because that's our job, to find those resources and bring that professional development and those structures to everyone. So,
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Hoover.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, this is an action item, so we do have to vote on that. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the 2021-2022 school improvement plan for all schools as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Counts. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Daniels?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next order of business is to approve facility rental guidelines. Dr. Arkanoff? Oh, sorry.
How could you forget that? That's the
How
one-
could I marked
That's the
it.
one everyone's here for.
That's it, one, yeah. Let's back up to approve copier printer contract agreements.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, thank you, Mr. Russell. This evening, I'm recommending that the board approve the copier printer contract agreements, and Dr. Gabriel will provide you with some additional information.
Yes, thank you. The board has been provided with a memo with some, and copies of the contracts that we're proposing this evening. Not going to read that to you, but just hit a few highlights. Our existing copier contract expires on September 30th of this year, and after a lot of conversations, we're proposing that we renew with our existing vendor, Van Osdale and Farrar. I think some of the reasons for that is that we've been very happy with the service they've provided. You know, we'd certainly like to avoid the disruption associated with changing vendors. And we're really pleased that this new contract proposes, of course, all brand-new equipment and will cost us less than our existing contract does. Some of the improvements involved in this are that the current contract is for 54 months. The proposed new contract is for 48 months. We've found over the years that as we get to the end of the life of the contract, it gets harder and harder to keep the equipment maintained. So we've moved from a 5-year contract to a 4.5-year contract, and now to a 4-year contract, which is really, I think, where we'd like to land, to avoid those end-of-life problems where people are struggling to keep the equipment operating. And of course, all the equipment that we're providing is brand new. All the technology is 4 years newer than what they currently have. Some of the improvements that are included are a more intuitive operating panel that operates more like a smartphone, and more advanced scanning capabilities, more intelligent scanning engine, and we do a lot of scanning on these devices now as we're trying to go more paperless, and newer built-in, more security, as all these machines are networked, and so that provides for improved security. The savings that we're looking at, just briefly about that, we make 3 types of payments. A leasing payment for the equipment, charges based on volume of copies we produce, and then payments to Van Alsdale Farrar to provide maintenance and copy center staff and services. So when we look at each of those things, on the lease payment, we're going to save about $95,000. On the volume-based copy charges, we're going to save about $87,000. And the payments to Van Osdale, we're going to go up in that case because we're paying largely for their staff. And as you would expect, after 4 years, that has to increase. So we're going to be paying more by about $56,000 in that area. But the total savings over the 4-year life of the contract is $126,000. We currently have plans to install this equipment over the fall break, and you have copies have been provided of the contracts. They're very similar to the contracts we currently have in place, almost word for word the same, and we've talked with Jeff Qualkenbush about some of the changes, and he has given us a go-ahead on that. So this evening, we're asking the board to approve these 2 contracts for new copiers.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Gabriel?
This may not be for Dr. Gabriel, maybe we need a report from the folks at Van Osdale, but as we move more books online, have we noticed, and more materials online, or maybe Dr. Hoover can answer, have we noticed our volume decreasing?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. The one answer to that is, well, yes, but what happened? We didn't hold school. People were not physically present. And so that really throws the long-term picture out of line, and we kind of have to...
The last year skewed the...
Yeah, it really skews the picture. So are we up this year from last year? Well, yeah, because everybody's in school. So so I don't know that there's an easy answer to that. I've been tracking that for the last 10 years or so, and occasionally we're down, but most years we're up. As we have more students and more staff, we'll just have to see where we land at the end of this school year. So,
And on kind of a side note, but it goes to the copier, they have been wonderful in providing the empty copy boxes for the alternative school and the pantry, because it's the right size box for
Yeah.
the food to go into, so
yeah,
they are partnering beyond
That's good.
the contract.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the lease agreement. I'm not sure how you pronounce that.
Vanessa?
oh,
With, is that Delage Landon Public Finance LLC
yes.
for the machines and the management services agreement with Van Oskel and Farrar for maintenance and copy center services.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Counts. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Daniels? Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Now, our next order of business will be to approve facility rental guidelines revision.
Thank you. This evening, I'm recommending that the board approve the changes to the facility rental guideline, and Dr. Gabriel will provide you with additional information.
Yes, this evening, we're asking the board to approve new facility rental guidelines. These were last updated in May of 2018. Besides some simple wording changes, the only really major change involves new rental guidelines for the pool. You can find these on page 5, which he has up there. And our aquatics director, Brad Smith, is here. He, along with myself and Dr. Long and the high school principal and athletic director and assistant athletic director have talked about this, had extensively with different conversations, and have tried to pull this together. And I think they're quite enthusiastic about more community rental of that pool. There's been a great deal of interest expressed in that. And other than that, there really aren't any big changes. I do want to mention that page 7 of this document is the actual facility rental request. And we're in the process of talking to a vendor to be able to put this online, because this is, we don't do a lot of these, but it is a paper-based system, and so we're trying to make this online so that people can submit it online, but more importantly, we can be routed through various locations online. So this evening, we're asking the board to approve these new guidelines.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Any questions for Dr. Gabriel?
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but we've either been asked or we've already held a Division II.
I believe we've been asked.
We've been
You're talking about
asked.
for the natatorium?
For the
I
natatorium.
know
Yeah,
Brad
we've
would
been
be
asked, yeah.
very happy to talk about that.
Yeah. Would you like to come up here and
Yeah.
talk about that a minute? Yes.
I'm assuming that's part of what probably prompted some of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that it's new and
It's
we're
new.
open.
It's new,
Figure out
yeah.
what to do, right?
Yeah.
Did want to make sure it was open before we rented it.
That would be helpful.
Good evening. In my short time, we've already been asked by the University of Indianapolis to host an invitational, as well as the D2 National Championships. Some of the guidelines, they've asked for an additional 3-meter diving board right now, so to host the national championships, that's going to be put on hold. But they are very excited to host they call it the D2 Showcase. It's 6 of the top 10 Division II programs that'll come in here to Center Grove. I've also entertained conversations from the National Water Polo Championships for the age group. They're very interested in our facility, age group triathlons. So beyond just competitive swimming, the facility is definitely taking ear in local community organizations. So,
Could you introduce yourself to the audience?
I'm Brad Smith. I'm the new aquatics director. Spent 27 years at Indian Creek and proud to be a Trojan now. So,
I don't think we had a chance to welcome aboard.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the facility guideline revisions as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Daniels?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Thanks. Now, our next order of business is the 1028 preliminary determination hearing and resolutions, middle school projects.
Thank you. I'll start us out here. This evening, this is a hearing prior to the sale of bonds to finance the middle school building projects. I'll turn it over to Mr. Russell to run the hearing at this time. So here we go, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Arkanoff. I will now open this public hearing. I would like to turn it over to Dr. Gabriel to present the project, the financing of the project, and actions we are taking this evening. Dr. Gabriel.
Thank you. I have a nice presentation with 20 slides, but it is basically exactly this presentation that was made at the last board meeting. Since that time, we've had no changes or any significant issues brought up about this, so I'm going to be very brief in skipping through some of these slides. And I'd start with number 4, just very briefly. This describes what we're doing at Middle School North, some safety issues with temperature controls and security cameras, and then improving and expanding some classroom space for, excuse me, for band, orchestra, music, and of course, expanding the cafeteria and providing new furniture. The next slide at Middle School Central, what are we doing at that facility? Again, adding security cameras, beginning some of the classroom renovations that haven't been touched in many years, and then adding, at this location, adding classrooms and an LGI, about 12 regular classrooms, science rooms, and art rooms. And I think probably most people have seen the portables out there that will be required until this construction is finished. And then new furniture, and again, expanding the cafeteria and the kitchen. And I move to slide 12. This slide shows the funding for the Middle School Central renovation. It includes both the actual construction costs along with all the associated fees, and it's $22.3 million. It's that large because we are adding that large wing to the building. Next slide is the Middle School North budget. It's $8.5 million, again, significantly smaller since we're not doing as much work at that facility. Next slide, there is the required financial information, and I would focus on the last line and note that we're going to be, we'll be able to pay for these projects without any increase in the tax rate. Next slide, we've showed this, I've showed this slide many times. This shows what our tax rate has been since 2004, very, very level since that time. So then I'd go to 17. This is the second public hearing, and so after this hearing is concluded, the board will be asked to approve a resolution authorizing these projects. After that, we publish a notice which begins a 30-day waiting period, and after that, architects are required, will then finalize the plans. We expect bids for this work will be approved by the board next spring, and work on this phase will be completed in the summer of '23 at Middle School North and the summer of '24 at Middle School Central. The first payment on the bonds won't be needed until 2024. So I knew we sometimes get asked, where's that in the budget? Well, it's not in the budget. Don't have to budget that until 2024. So that's a brief overview of the projects, and I'll turn it back to Mr. Russell to continue the hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. This is the appropriate time for members of the public to comment on the middle school building projects and only on the middle school building projects or the information presented this evening. Are there members of the public present who would like to comment on this particular subject? Thank you. I now close this public hearing. Are there any board members who have any comments or questions?
I don't have any additional questions than I've already asked last month.
We have, this has been an ongoing discussion, so it's not new information to the board.
I was looking forward to those 40 slides.
Yeah, we miss those days, Dr. Gabriel. Or the days of binders.
Yeah, right.
Take them home with you, Joe.
I was gonna ask for my budget binder in a minute.
I know he is.
Always your favorite thing. Okay, seeing as there's no more discussion.
Jack, I do just.
Oh,
wanna
I'm
add
sorry,
kind
Mr.
of the
Daniels.
obvious.
Yes,
It's commendable, the administration has found a way to, once again, do things that need to be done to expand without raising taxes, so I
Very
think that
commendable.
needs to be said.
they are always very mindful of that in any project. Thank you, Mr. Daniels.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the resolution approving the 1028 preliminary determination reimbursement and related matters for the middle school renovation project.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Daniels?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dr. Gabriel,
Thank you.
and stay right there. Our next order of business is the budget hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. You got that open too?
Let me get to it.
All righty. All
Okay.
right, this evening is the hearing for the 2022 budget, and I will turn it over to you, Mr. Russell, to run the hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Harknoff. This evening's board meeting has been appropriately advertised as a hearing on the 2022 budget, the bus replacement plan, and the capital projects fund plan. I now open this public hearing. I would like to call on Dr. Gabriel again to provide an update on the budget. Dr. Gabriel.
Okay. And again, I have 20 slides that I'm not going to cover all in detail. But I would go to the second slide. This kind of shows you the overall schedule that we're operating under. We advertised this by posting a notice in the state gateway site on September the 10th. And then tonight is a hearing. And that's on the budget and the bus replacement plan and the capital projects plan. And then there'll be no action by the board this evening. And then at the next regularly scheduled board meeting on the October 21st, we will ask the board to adopt that information. So that's kind of the overall schedule. Sorry. And I do want to say, if you go back to that one, it has the website posted. We have a great deal of information available on the website about next year's budget, actually about every year's budget for the last decade or so. So if there's anyone has an interest in looking at that, it's available there. And again, that's one of the reasons why I'm not going to go through it all in detail. There's a lot more information there than what I'm going to present tonight. Slide 5. Just an update on enrollment. Our official enrollment date was September the 17th. And our preliminary number that we have for that date is 9,083. That's an increase of 238 students from last year. And we always have to say that that's not final. We're in a period of correction and adjustment all across the state. And about the middle of October, we'll actually have the final number. Because we had to finalize a budget a few weeks ago, the official, or the number that the budget is based on is 9111, which is a little higher than that. And right now, we get about $6,200 per student for every student we get. Next slide. We do have a capital projects plan. That's one of the reasons for this meeting. It's available on the website. And since 2010, we've supplemented that plan with revenue from general obligation bonds. We intend to do that again next year. The bonds will total $5.5 million. And they will fund projects for our maintenance department and our technology department. Next slide. This slide shows the maintenance department projects. There's even more detail about these on the website. Next slide shows the technology projects. Again, more details on those projects on the website. Next slide We also have a bus replacement plan that we're required to present every year by the state requires that of us. We currently have 100 buses in our fleet, and next year our plans are to replace 9 of those at a cost of about $1 million, depending on what the prices look like when we get ready to buy next year. Next slide, please. I always like to talk about some of the big changes in the budget, and I would just mention a few of these. One is we've made a pretty significant change with our nurses and our athletic training services, and we've moved those to expenses to community health through our partnership with them, and that has saved our budget $376,000. It's always nice to talk about that. Unfortunately, that third bullet says with what Mr. Taylor has previously alluded to is we've got a pretty big increase. We've increased our premiums by just about 13% because our health insurance plan expenses have been going up. So then slide 12. Just want to mention our tax rate. As we've said, this shows you our 2021, our existing tax rate, our proposed tax rate for next year, which is up just a very small amount. And I just do want to mention that when we advertise this on the forms, we advertise a much higher rate because we can always lower it but never increase it, and so we do that to guard against any errors in estimation or procedures. I don't need to show you the tax slide that you've already seen. 15, please. We do a calculation of what the impact of this change in the tax rate will be, and we've done that here for a home valued at $300,000, and our tax rate is actually going to increase by 0.008, and that would be a $6 a year increase for this homeowner of a $300,000 house. So I'll go to 17. So kind of summarize where we are with the budget this year. The education fund and the operations fund are balanced budgets. Mention our enrollment up 238 at this point. Our estimated tax rate is $1.02.4, which is up 0.008 from the current year. An annual impact of $6 for a home valued at $300,000. So last slide again, it shows you the web address for the budget. If you have questions, you can contact myself or our communications director, Stacy Conrad. As I said, lots of information there. As I like to say, if you're curious or if you just can't sleep at night, there's something for you to go read. So with that, I turn the hearing back over to Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Any questions for Dr. Gabriel? We're still in a hearing. Okay, this is appropriate time for members of the public to comment on the budget or the information presented this evening. Are there any members of the public present who would like to comment? Yes.
May I see slide 5 again?
You can come up, oh, yeah.
Slide,
Oh, sure,
just
yeah.
want to see this.
And this,
If you'd like to speak on it, come up to the microphone.
thank you. I just want to see the slide again.
yeah.
Thank you. No questions.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. Are there any board members now who have comments or questions?
None for me at the moment.
I just have one. What's the average age of a bus?
Well,
Do we know
the
that?
state suggests that we should make them last 10 years, and I can't, 12 years. I can't tell you exactly what our average is, but we come very close to that, because if we're replacing something that's less than 12 years old, we have to explain why. And in this plan, you'll see there's one bus we're replacing that's not 12 years old. So almost all the time, they're at that 12-year mark or a little bit longer.
Okay, thank you.
That estimated replacement cost, that's total for 9 buses.
Oh, yes, that's the total for 9 buses, yeah.
Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. So please be aware that there is no board action to be taken this evening. The board will approve the budget at the next regular meeting on October 21st, 2021. And at this time, I close the hearing. Always fun. Okay, some quick announcements, and then we'll go to public comments. September 27th, we have a special board meeting at 7:30 a.m. here in the admin building in this boardroom. October 21st, we have a board work session and executive session before the regular board meeting. And well, October 21st will be the regular board meeting that night. It's a long day for us. So at this time, we will do our public comments. We've had 2 people sign up. Please listen to the criteria. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and will be requested to preface their comments by an announcement of their name, address, group affiliation, if any. Each statement made by participants shall be limited to 3 minutes duration and may only speak once. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Presiding officer may prohibit public comments which are frivolous, repetitive, or harassing. Interrupt, warn, or terminate a person's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Request any individual to leave the meeting when that person behaves in a manner that is disruptive of the orderly conduct of the meeting. Request the assistance of law enforcement officers in the removal of a disorderly person when that person's behavior interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Call for a recess or an adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action. So at this time, our first speaker is Kara Cecil.
Which action item, Dr. Russell?
And her action item is the proposed policy revision.
Thank you.
If you would, Kara, your name and address.
Kara Cecil, I live at 5092 Windale Drive, Bargersville, 46106.
Thank you.
I am actually very interested to hear in your recitation of our bylaw regarding public comment. That is exactly what I plan to speak about tonight. I'm glad to see this issue finally come to light. I am shocked to hear that you plan to vote on this public policy change on Monday, 9/27. Is that a public meeting? Is a question I'd like to know. I understand bylaw votes must occur in a public meeting. I have been noting that for at least 2 months, the school board president has circulated in hard copy and read into the record, as you just heard, what he calls the official bylaw on public participation. In fact, it has been shared in hard copy tonight. However, the actual text of the bylaw was approved March 7, 2012. It can be found on the board docs website. I have a copy of it right here in case you're curious. What Mr. Russell is circulating is an unapproved proposed revision. This misrepresentation of the rules surrounding public participation in school board meetings is both important and timely. This issue is so important right now because the school board president has refused all requests by community members to be placed on the agenda. Despite following all the requirements outlined in this particular bylaw, all requests have been denied. This is a violation of Indiana Code 514.1.5.1, also known as Indiana Open Door Law. I requested to be on the agenda. I provided all the information in the correct time frame. I asked to speak about social emotional learning and the related panorama survey. However, this request was denied. This is why the review of public participation bylaw is so important. I made this request to be on the agenda after the school system violated Federal Code 20 USC 1232 HA, the Hatch Amendment, Indiana Code 2035-17, their own handbook, and the stated policy regarding the panorama survey. I, along with many other parents, submitted our parental non-consent form for all of my children. These were submitted electronically. I received
Kara,
confirmation
you're
of
getting off
receipt.
topic. You said you were going to speak on this policy revision, period.
May I skip one sentence to where I address consistent and meaningful access to the board via public participation?
Is that it? You done, or
No, I'm not done.
stay on topic, please?
Without consistent, meaningful access to our board, our elected policymakers, how can we effectively address issues like this? Without open and unfettered access to the board, how can we work together to hold the school system responsible for this violation of both rights and trust? Parents across this district have emailed, called, asked for meetings, and shown up to public meetings just like this one. We have attended coffee chats, made signs, planned rallies, yet our voices are not effectively being heard by our elected board. We come and hear half-truths, condescension, and lectures. This does not make for meaningful public participation in board meetings. School board members, school administrators, we are the parents. We do not co-parent with you. We will not be ignored. You have an ethical and legal obligation. It is well past time to stand up, show up, and do your job.
Let's keep a decorum here, please. Our next speaker is Brittany Carroll. If you'll come up, please. State your name and address, Brittany, please.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm Brittany Carroll. I live at 2069 Caledonian Court here in the Center Grove community, and I am the mom of Center Grove school children. Can I begin?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
The Supreme Court case Troxel v. Granville cites a constitutional right of parents to direct the upbringing of their children. The court held that, quote, the interest of parents in the care, custody, and control of their children is perhaps the oldest of the fundamental liberty interests recognized by this court, end quote. The plurality held that, quote, choices parents make about the upbringing of children are among associational rights sheltered by the 14th Amendment against the state's unwarranted usurpation, disregard, or disrespect, end quote. Troxel requires courts to give parents' decisions considerable deference, and as illuminated by prior Supreme Court cases, that deference to the parents' wishes will be overcome only by some compelling governmental interest and by overwhelmingly clear factual circumstances supporting that government interest. This school board is on the wrong side of the law here. There exists no overwhelmingly clear factual circumstances supporting universally masking school children only during school hours. And Governor Holcomb.
Here, you said you were going to talk about the policy revision here. If you have
If there
that,
was ever a policy revision needed, I plead that you will hear what I have to say about the
Let's stay on the
Constitution of the
subject.
United States.
policy revision doesn't have to do with the masks.
I'm sorry, I did not hear what you said.
The policy revision doesn't have to do with the masks.
Well, the time that I signed in, it wasn't clear what was going to be under revision, and this, I implore you, needs some consideration.
It has to be about what's on the agenda, which is policy revision. It was on the website ahead of time.
It says 7.2 proposed policy revisions. That's what it states. I specifically requested to be placed on the agenda, and I timely and properly made that request. I was denied. I don't know how parents are allowed to address the board if we're denied our timely and appropriate request to be on the agenda, and then we're denied our 3-minute comment. It's 3 minutes. You can plug your ears, but I have a right to say these things. I'm the parent.
We have to stick to policy so everyone's treated equal. So if you want to talk about the policy, fine.
The parents here are upset, and this is a respectful way to voice our concerns. We are following procedure. I came respectfully in my mask. I did not take it down one time. We are complying with all of these, rules that are being put forth before us. We just want to be heard. We are the parents. We get to make the decisions in the best interest of our children. Are you going to allow me to continue?
If you'll talk about the policy of
I'm
public
not
speaking.
sure what policy I'm allowed to discuss, because the policy that needs to be discussed is our parental rights.
But there's probably no discussion that we could have here with this. The
Mrs.
policy,
Carroll, the policy is on public input,
input.
and the change was to clarify on action items.
which we just went over a while ago.
It's that policy right there.
We have to stick with some kind of procedural so that the meetings can have
We're following
decorum.
all the procedures.
Okay, okay.
These are.
We are always open to meet with you one-on-one. We've made that quite clear.
No, that's actually not true, and I'm frustrated
Meeting is
because
adjourned.